Okay, we are here today to talk about Chapter 13, A House Divided. I'm Mr. Loebner. This guy is
Me, Mr. Loebner Jr.
Mr. Loebner Jr. All right, so this is Chapter 13 from the time periods 1840 to 1861. And the issue of slavery is going to be at the forefront of American politics. And a lot of this has to do with all of this new land that the Americans want. The idea of manifest destiny. You ever hear of that?
I don't think so.
Because you're stupid. That's the
I'm
idea
not.
that Americans have a divine mission from God to settle the continent. And the land that they want is the Mexican frontier. So what's wrong with taking land from Mexico?
It's that it's their land, and there's a lot of like big states which are now like California and Texas, and that was a part of Mexico that we stole.
And who else's land was there?
The Native Americans.
That's right. But it's okay because God wanted it that way, right? Say no.
No.
No, but that's what the Americans believed at the time. Many of them, not all.
It's
All right, so
terrible.
the Mexican government encouraged the Americans to settle into Texas. American immigrants started pouring in, and they brought with them their slaves. And the Mexican government's going to prohibit slavery. Americans will still bring it in. And this is going to lead to war. You ever hear of the Alamo?
Yeah, I read about in like a book.
Yeah. Well, General Santa Anna, who was also the president of Mexico, sent an army to the Alamo. Do you know what city that's in?
I haven't read it in a long time.
Oh, that's a cop-out. San Antonio, come on. And who's going to win, the Mexicans or the Americans?
The Americans.
Wrong, the Mexicans.
Oh.
You need to actually read that book next time. Don't just look at the pictures.
It was a stupid You Choose book.
What was the, let's see if you remember this, what was the battle cry for the Americans the next year? Remember the Alamo. Good job, Jack. Well done. All right. On to the election of 1844. Maybe you should just be quiet and listen. Henry Clay, who was the Whig candidate, that's what your daddy needs, right? And you someday, they're
Oh,
going
no.
to reject the idea of annexation of Texas. And James Polk, ever hear of him?
I don't think I have.
He was the Democratic nominee, and he's going to win the election. He was an annexationist. He wanted to add more land onto the United States, and he wanted California, and he wanted Oregon. So Polk's going to win the election, and he has 4 goals as president. Reduce the tariff. I bet you know what that is, right? Wrong. Reestablish the independent treasury, settle the Oregon dispute, and acquire California. So Polk offers the Mexicans money to buy California. The Mexicans say,
No!
and that's why we went to war with them. They wouldn't sell us California, so we went to war there.
Which is not cool.
Hell yeah. So the Warren's critics, they're going to believe Polk is just trying to add new land so slavery can increase. Henry David Thoreau is going to write On Civil Disobedience, and that's the idea where if you think a law is bad or if an act is bad, then you can break it. And Thoreau said, I'm not paying my taxes to pay for this terrible war. You know who's going to be inspired by him? Great civil rights leader, 100 years later? Dr. Martin.
Dr. Martin Luther King.
Very nice. Abraham Lincoln, a young Abraham Lincoln from Illinois, is going to oppose the war. Actually, asked Polk to show proof of where blood was spilled so they can determine who started the war. That never happened. So the Americans are going to trounce the Mexicans, and by the terms of the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo, you ever heard of that one?
No.
The Americans will pay $15 million to acquire all of this new land. Here's just a map of the battles that took place throughout Mexico.
Oh, goodness.
So now the Americans have this new territory. Native Americans were regarded as savage tribes. This is going to expand the area of potential for slavery to be brought in. So it's going to create a lot of problems.
Oh, God.
All right, gold. They're going to discover gold in California. There'll be a gold craze. Going to pump in a lot of money into the American economy. Here's an image of where the gold rush was. America's going to open up Japan at this time. We're going to arrive in Japan with some warships and demand that they start trading with us. The United States sounds like a nice country, huh? And what's really going to start trouble is the Wilmot Proviso. So Congressman David Wilmot is going to introduce a bill that says no slavery can exist in this new Mexican territory. And all of the Northerners support the measure. Most Southerners are against it.
Boo.
All right. And in the 1848 election, Zachary Taylor is going to be elected president. He defeats the other nominees, Lewis Cass and Martin Van Buren. That'll be important when we get to the Compromise of 1850. Here's just a map of the country expanding in the years that each state came in. So the Free Soil Appeal, Congress has no constitutional power to abolish slavery. So all that new land, the Free Soilers do not want any future states to allow slavery. That's the whole goal of the Free Soilers. Okay. Compromise of 1850. California wants to become a state, and they're going to get in as a free state. Southerners oppose this. All right, because it's going to upset the sectional balance. Remember we talked about this during lunch yesterday? Just kidding. And a compromise, both sides have to give in. So what the South is going to get is a strict fugitive slave law, which allows free blacks and escaped slaves to be recaptured and brought back where?
To the plantations.
Yeah, back to the South. Very
by
good.
slave hunters.
So when Zachary Taylor died, the new president Millard Fillmore, ever hear of that guy?
No.
No, he stunk. They're gonna make this compromise happen. Henry Clay's compromise.
It was Connecticut.
Oh boy. All right. So we talked about fugitive slaves. In the 1852 election, the Democratic candidate was Franklin Pierce. He's going to defeat the Whig candidate Winfield Scott, and Pierce will recognize the compromise as having settled the slavery question, but the slavery issue is not going away. You ever hear of popular sovereignty?
No.
All right. Well, you're about to. That's the idea where the people of a territory can vote if they wanted to allow slavery or not.
I love learning new words.
Yeah. Stephen Douglas is going to introduce this idea, and he wanted a railroad across the country through Kansas or Nebraska, and this is going to lead to the development of a brand new political party. Slavery was already prohibited by the Missouri Compromise, and this is going to shatter that. The Whig Party dissolves, popular sovereignty is the new way, and it introduces the idea that slavery can exist in these new territories in Kansas and Nebraska. So a brand new political party will emerge, and they are the Republican parties. Who's the first Republican president? Also the tallest one, maybe the best one. Lincoln. Who is it?
Lincoln,
That's
I
right.
bet.
So Minnesota, Nebraska, Utah, New Mexico, all of these territories, the issue of slavery is going to be ever present. All right, we're also going to have a short-lived Know-Nothing party. They would go around beating up immigrants, and when people would say, "Why'd you do that?" they would say, "I don't know. Nothing." Sound like a nice party? We should do that.
Oh.
No, we should not.
No, we
It's
should
bad.
not.
It's bad
It's
parenting.
Evil. Gangs. Evil.
So, this Republican Party is formed. It's a coalition of Democrats that are against slavery, the Northern Whigs, the Free Soilers, and some of the Know-Nothings. And their whole idea is based on free labor. Okay, they don't want slavery in the West. It's going to lead to less jobs for the white people. Okay? And the Republicans were not abolitionists. What does it mean if you want to abolish something?
You want to get rid of it.
That's right. We're going to abolish video games in our house. All right. The big issue was Bleeding Kansas in the mid-1850s. And there, pro-slavery Missourians are going to cross over the border, vote illegally. It's going to lead to a civil war in this territory. 200 people will be killed. Charles Sumner, a representative from Massachusetts, is going to give a speech attacking slavery. And a man named Preston Brooks will beat Sumner unconscious with a cane, gold-tipped cane. You ever hear this story?
No.
He had his buddies protecting the entrance, and he is going to hit him so much and cause so much bleeding that Sumner will be blinded temporarily from all the blood in his eyes.
Oh my God.
And will be out of work for a number of years. In the South, Brooks becomes a hero, and in the North, Sumner is also a heroic figure because his stand against slavery is just going to further divide the country apart. Maybe our worst president ever, James Buchanan, will be elected in 1856, and he'll defeat the first Republican candidate, John Fremont. And there's a picture of Charles Sumner getting beat.
Oh my God.
I know, very sad. This is the election of 1856. We can see Buchanan carries the entire South, few of the northern states, so we're definitely voting along sectional lines now. Ever hear of Dred Scott?
No.
Very sad case. Dred Scott was a Missouri slave who later lived in free territory in the North, so he sued for his freedom. And the idea was if you live in the North and you're a slave, then that makes you free. But these Southern justices, led by Chief Justice Roger Taney, believed that blacks were not citizens, therefore they have no right to sue. And also the Constitution, slavery cannot be changed by it. Congress has no right to ban slavery in any territories. So this is a big setback for slaves and for abolitionists. There's Dred Scott right there. Abraham Lincoln. What do you know about this guy?
He's the tallest president. I think that's why, because he has the big top hat.
Good one.
He was actually killed by John Wilkes Booth, sadly, in a theater.
Spoiler alert, that's next chapter. What if people didn't know that? You're unbelievable.
Sorry.
Lincoln's going to run for the Senate seat in 1858 against Stephen Douglas. What was Douglas's big idea? Popular sovereignty. God. Lincoln was willing to compromise with the South to keep the country together. He would have kept slavery. He just wanted to get rid of it eventually and stop it from spreading. However, when the Civil War erupts, things will change. So, Douglas will narrowly defeat Lincoln for the Senate seat. We'll see Lincoln again in national politics 2 years later. There's Lincoln beardless, like me now,
Oh my God.
on the left, and Stephen Douglas on the right. You ever hear of John Brown?
No, I haven't.
John Brown and his sons, there were 14 white people, 7 black people. They went together. They attacked a federal arsenal. The idea was steal lots of weapons, go from plantation to plantation, give the weapons to which people?
The
The
slaves.
slaves, and lead an armed rebellion. But they never made it out of Harper's Ferry. Brown got executed. Again, hero in the North, villain in the South. That's right. So the election of 1860, we're going to see Lincoln nominated in the North. He's the Republican candidate, but the Democrats could not decide on one candidate. So they're actually their votes will be split in 3. Stephen Douglas gets the Northern Democrat vote, John Breckinridge the Southern Democrat vote, John Bell the Constitutional Union Party, and because of that, Lincoln is going to win on the platform: no more expansion of slavery, free homesteads in the West, all that new territory, a tariff to pump money into the economy for infrastructure, and a transcontinental railroad. Woo woo! Election of 1860, Lincoln wins every state in the North except New Jersey. Breckinridge gets the slave states, Bell gets the upper South states, and Douglas will win votes in all states, but doesn't win any sections. So Lincoln will be the new president. And as a result, in the next 4 months, Southerners are going to make a plan to form their own country. What is that called if a state leaves the Union? It's right there on the screen, silly.
Oh my God.
Secession.
Secession movement.
So they're going to have their own president, Jefferson Davis, president of the Confederate States of America. President Buchanan opposes the idea of secession, but says the government has no right to use it. All right. So war's going to come. South Carolina was the first state to secede. 6 other Deep South states will follow suit. And then the Confederate forces will attack Fort Sumter, South Carolina, starting the Civil War. 4 more states will leave: Virginia, North Carolina, Tennessee. Who else? Keep up with me.
Arkansas.
All right. And there'll be 4 southern states that remain loyal. They still allow slavery, but they don't break away. Who are those states?
Missouri, Kentucky, Maryland, and Delaware.
Very nice. And here are the first shots being fired of the Civil War. And that is Fort Sumter here, occupied by the North. And these are South Carolina troops attacking. And that will lead us to the next chapter on the Civil War. All right, hope this helped you. Good luck on your test.
Goodbye.